Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hogstye. Weird fact that I saw on social media. Today, the day we are recording this, October 7th, is the one-year anniversary that Jay Gruden was fired for not preparing Dwayne Haskins properly as a quarterback and for, making him ride the bench when the owner really wanted to see Dwayne Haskins play. It is very interesting that it is that anniversary, and today Ron Rivera has benched Dwayne Haskins in favor of the backup quarterback he brought with him, Allen, from Carolina. I am joined today by Jamal and Steve, guys. We were all ready to just talk a little L.A. Rams versus Washington football team, and bombshell got thrown at us. So, ready for a fun one?
Yeah, well, first of all, just let me say up front, it's kind of a sad day in my world because my musical idol, Eddie Van Halen, died yesterday unexpectedly. And so for those of you who are rock and roll fans and guitar fans, he was unparalleled. So it's a very sad day in that regard. I just wanted to pay tribute to him here and now. But in terms of, I didn't know it was the anniversary of Jay Gruden getting fired.
Yeah, I didn't know either. And then somebody posted it.
I have to think it's just a really strange coincidence.
Yeah, week 5.
Yeah. But yeah, look, in terms of Haskins, I mean, my initial thought right off the bat was I'm not really buying Ron's explanation because it's fundamentally illogical in parts, but I have the quotes here. We'll go over them. But essentially what he said was, we're 1-3. It hadn't gone well, but we still have a chance to win. So I'm going to put Kyle Allen in, who knows the offense better. That part I understand. But why is he all of a sudden concerned about winning now when he's quit on two games in a row? So to me, there's something else going on here. I don't know what it is. If he's just tired of Dwayne, maybe Dwayne's not working hard behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I think it's a really dumb thing to do in a wasted season like this. This is a wasted. Look, even if they get in the playoffs at 7-8 or whatever, it's a wasted season. Okay, sure. And I thought Dwayne deserved more than 4 games to prove himself and to develop. Because, the example I put out on Twitter, number one, Ryan Tannehill, and he got 2 years of being pretty bad before he got his act together in Miami, and now he's a starter. Number one, Daniel Jones, his stats are not really any better than Haskins.
They're mostly worse.
Well, they're about the same. I put out a thing about him. I mean, he's at like 62% completion percentage and about 80 quarterback rating. I mean, they're in the same ballpark, and New York hadn't even contemplated benching him. So right. I just think it's a poor thing to do from a player development standpoint. I mean, I'm not like, crying over Dwayne Haskins necessarily, but it's just a waste of a first-round draft pick when he didn't really get a shot, and he didn't have a shot last year either, particularly. So I just find it really kind of a dumb time to do it. That's my thought.
Well, I think the issue, you kind of alluded to it, but I don't think you didn't hammer home like you could have. Ron Rivera fooled a lot of people, including himself, when he tried to tell people that this was a developmental year. I don't care what you say, and I actually think I said it on this podcast as I'm bringing this back up. I don't care what you say. You still want to win football games. You still know in your head, if you're a competitor, that you want to get such and such done. You're not going to be okay with going 3-13. You're not going to be okay with going 4-12. It don't matter what you tell the fans, that you need to have some patience because things aren't going to look that great year one. Okay, fine. And on the field, you may not get the results, the win-loss results that's what you're preparing the fans for, and that's completely fine. But as a competitor, you're going to sit here and you're going to tell yourself, look, I can win these games. I know I can win these games. This is your ego talking. This is somebody else saying, like, I feel like if we put this person in, we can make this happen. Now, that's on the competitive side. In terms of Haskins, he falls into that part to a degree, but it also comes down to like how he's performing. I do not agree with him being benched right now. I thought, if anything, that game brought him 12, at least till week 12, between weeks 12 through 16. It bought him that much time. So having that cut 8 weeks prior to week 12, I'm like, okay, well, this is insane. I had no idea this was coming. I'm not surprised that he got benched. I'm surprised at the time and what week of the season he got benched. So when it comes to Haskins, Ron Rivera is looking at him like, I don't know if he's ready for this. He's not doing the things that we wanted to see in him. He's not developing to a certain extent. At this point, I feel like the way this division is looking, I have an opportunity to move forward with a quarterback that I think that's better and ready to move his offense at a different level. But also, moving on from Haskins, this is an opportunity to see what else we got, because I don't think I'm completely sold on Haskins. And truth be told, to be quite blunt, he's not sold on Haskins at all, in the slightest.
Yeah, I think it's, you would have to be lying to yourself to look at what Dwayne's put on tape and say he's great. Like, he's not. I mean, he's got serious issues that he needs to work on, and he needs to work on them in practice. He needs to work on them on the field. We heard early on that his leadership qualities weren't the issue. Like, he was being a good locker room guy. He was kind of giving the speeches at that first game to, rally the players when Rivera had to go get an IV. It is interesting because I think he has so much he needs to work on in terms of his mechanics, in terms of his ability to read the field. But, okay, you can maybe fix the mechanics in a practice. I don't know if you fix any of the other problems he has without playing. I don't know of a way to do that. Like, you can't, ever really simulate a football game anymore in practice.
Well, the reading the field is tough. There's no doubt. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody's problem for this, certainly my problem with it, and it sounds like Jamal's too, wasn't so much that he got benched. It was that it was done so early in the season. Mm-hmm. That's my problem with it. And I'll tell you the other thing, in case everybody doesn't realize this, they've also named Alex Smith as the backup.
Yeah.
And that means they're done with him. I know some folks have said, hey, Haskins could come back and blah, blah, blah. That's not going to happen. They've made him the third stringer. Alex Smith, for better or for worse, health-wise, is the backup. And I think they're done with him, and it's the Kyle Allen show, or they're drafting a quarterback next year. I mean, that's what I think is going on here.
Well, I don't think there's an or. I think it's that they are definitely, like, there's no way they can go in and say Kyle Allen's, unless Kyle Allen somehow wins like 8 games in the next.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they end up 2-14 and have the first draft pick, yeah, it's right. Trevor Lawrence or bust for sure.
Right.
But we'll see. But point is, this is it for Dwayne, I think, in DC.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see, just because, again, they just drafted him last year, and I said this on Twitter, and Alex, I think you didn't agree with me, but that's fine. We can disagree. But Washington has really put on a clinic on how to ruin a quarterback.
Oh, no, I've always agreed with that.
Have you? Okay, somebody disagreed with me, we know then. But, the owner drafted him when the coach didn't want him, and the coach didn't play him, and then the next coach was, basically a 1968 style run offense, and they brought in a new coach with a new system and a new coordinator, and then there was no off season, and the coach clearly didn't really like him in the first place, and it's so many guys like this have talent and get ruined because they're in bad organization. We have all this chaos on top of that. That didn't help, surely.
No, it didn't.
So it's just it's a waste. Look, Dwayne's a big boy. He'll get over it and he'll move on, and that's fine. But it's just a waste, and I think they did it so early that I think he should have been given another several weeks to develop at a minimum and see what happens.
I mean, the one thing I'll say right now is I don't, and this is just me playing cap stuff, I don't necessarily think you can say the whole book is written on Haskins. One, his salary makes it so you really won't want to cut him this year. You probably won't even want to cut him next year because
yeah, okay, I looked into that.
It's not a huge burden, but
he's got a $3.5 million cap hit and about $8.5 million in dead cap. But you can do that. You can work that out in a post June 1 thing if you wanted to. And
you could absorb it.
Palatable, yeah.
But that's a lot of.
It's a lot to absorb.
It's a lot to absorb. It's a lot of egg on the face. The other thing, and I'm just going to look back at some guys who also, have had struggles as young quarterbacks here. Patrick Ramsey got benched like 3 times and got brought back 3 times before we finally called it a day with him. Jason Campbell, kind of the same thing, where he came in, then he went out, then he came back in, and some of that was injury, some of that was he just wasn't ready. Like, we've seen this happen a few times with young quarterbacks. It hasn't boded well for them. But that kind of thing does happen. We saw it with Kirk Cousins, his second year. He struggled at one point. And they kept on. Remember Jay's rookie season? They rotated through all the quarterbacks twice at one point.
But and that's actually something that I spoke on earlier. That I'm glad you brought it up, because this is this whole situation is somewhat of an indication on. Or I wouldn't say indication, or I was going to say indictment, but I wouldn't even say that at this point. But it reflects Ron Rivera's decision-making skills to a certain extent. And what I mean by this is, you benched Haskins, but not only did you bench him, you put him third string, so he's obviously inactive. Alex Smith is suiting up as the backup. Right. If Kyle Allen goes out there and asses it up for X amount of weeks in a row to the point where you like, all right, well, he's not the guy either, and I was wrong. Now, you cannot go back to Haskins, obviously, and you're going to Smith. Alex Smith has not played football in 2 years. I'm banking on him playing terribly. I do not see him playing any type of level of competency. I mean, he knows how to check the ball down, so right. He can keep himself safe, but if he's not improving on offense like Dwayne wasn't, then you're on your third quarterback and you have nobody else to go to, because you're not going back to Dwayne. You just spent the whole year talking about you're trying to win now, but you're doing a quarterback carousel in the process, and in the same process you end up with three wins, 4 wins max. So you wasted so much time. You fooled a lot of people, including yourself once again, trying to believe that you're going to win, but at the same time you could have just kept Haskins in that whole time just to see and make certain that you knew what you had there before you just pulled the plug. But he pulled the plug at week 4. He's not going back to Haskins this year. No. And that's an unfortunate situation. And I compared that to Gruden because, like, you had the opportunity to do that for whatever reason, because people were getting hurt. That was people's excuses. Colt McCoy got hurt. Robert Griffin got hurt. Kirk Cousins was the one stable guy, but he turned the ball over too much, so you had to bench him. And This situation, nobody's hurt. Nobody's hurt.
Well, I mean, it's a long season. Guys do get hurt. Like, I'm hoping not, but, you have to factor in. Eventually, people will start going down with injuries.
We might be headed for, like, the Josh Freeman experience again.
Well, who's our Steve Montez? We have him, right?
Montez, that's true. Yeah, he's on the practice squad. So this is why I think Ron's being a little bit hypocritical about this. If you look at his quotes, the very first question, the first thing he said, I'm looking at the transcript here. They sent us the transcript.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I think this is a quote. Well, I think the biggest thing in this moment is looking at where we are in terms of the schedule and the situation and the circumstances. This has been thought out by me for a while. Emphasize that. And then he goes back into talking about how, he made this decision because all of a sudden, despite the fact that we're 1-3, they're actually in it because NFC just sucks rocks.
Right.
But at the beginning, he said, this has been thought out by me for a while. Meaning he's been thinking about this for weeks. So this is not an in-the-moment thing. And he goes down a little later, and where is it? Okay. He said, they asked him on why did Haskins start just 4 games? And he said, because we had to find out. I felt like with 4 games, if he could come out with those 4 games, 2-2 going into this week, I could stay with Dwayne in spite of the situation and circumstances. But we're 1-3. So this was his plan all along. And I don't know what difference 1 victory or 1 loss makes to the long-term development of the quarterback position, but to him it does. So, what he's really saying in here is Dwayne was never going to get more than 4 games here, and he's thought about this for a long time, and this was the plan. 4-game test period. So I think it's safe to say he didn't really believe in Dwayne in the first place, but he was willing to give him a chance because the owner drafted him. I think that's what's happened here. And he really likes Kyle Allen, obviously. Made no effort to sign Cam Newton. Instead brought Kyle Allen in. So that tells us that he really likes Allen, and that was probably the plan realistically all along. That's my read on this.
Yeah, I don't think that read, is unrealistic. I mean, we're all speculating a little about what's going on behind the scenes here. I've seen some crazy stuff online of what people think is going on. I don't really buy into any of it. I just think this is. I do think in the end it is a football decision. I don't necessarily like it, but it's Ron is trying to figure out how to make this team work.
I heard some racial allegations with this, and
I don't buy that.
The Hispanic coach who had the black quarterback at the other place,
right?
With the franchise that just hired an African American team president, and I think that's just dumb. I think people are reaching.
Let's not forget Ron Rivera, an outspoken advocate for women and minority coaching.
Right. Who has a female minority as a coach on the staff right now. Yeah. So I think if you guys believe that, I mean, Alex and Jamal, you can believe differently if you want, but I think that's dumb. Okay, that's dumb. In this case.
I don't buy that.
I pay no mind to it. I don't. It doesn't affect me no way. I think that the issue with that is people who I've seen it online. Like I've seen people talking about it. I've never seen the actual firestorm, I guess, that set it off. But the issue is the people who are quote tweeting it and actually responding to it and giving it attention.
I'll tell you who set it off, Jamal. It was Dwayne Haskins' personal QB coach.
For real?
It was his agent, wasn't it? His agent.
Well, his agent also said something, but his agent was a little more
miffed.
Yeah, not miffed. Let's say subtle in any kind of racial allegations. His QB coach, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's like a washed out, not even Arena Football League level player who like failed miserably as a professional after college, but he came right out and was one of the first guys who I saw said anything like that about it being race based.
If can y'all send me that? I just want to.
I'm looking it up. I'm trying to find it.
I just want to see what he said because it's incredible. It's like first off, you can tell like when people don't know an individual and they're just speaking based on their feelings with no basis, like talking about emotion versus actual rationale. Like one of the people that really bothered me was Dan Orlovsky in his comments where he tried to make the argument that Haskins wasn't the issue. And that's fine, but at the same time, when you're speaking on trying to figure out what the problem is and you've only watched a few minutes of a game and then had an opinion about the whole thing collectively, the whole season collectively, then you know what I'm saying, you're not really thinking with rationale. You're thinking off it's not a logical statement. You're thinking off something that's really just something that you've seen for a split second. Even if you may be right for that one game, you're still wrong on your entire assessment.
I mean, the failure has been part Dwayne, part lack of talent, part offensive line, poor blocking at times. That one for the fourth down call, in the fourth quarter of the Ravens game, which got so much attention and all of that because we got a billion comments about it when I put the film up. Yeah. I thought it was a bad play call, for example.
Yeah, I did too.
And so I think there's some blame to go around. I don't think it's to the extent I didn't hear what Orlovsky said, Jamal, except for what you described, but to the extent Orlovsky is saying Dwayne is without fault, that's just wrong.
No.
He was definitely at fault, and he wasn't performing well. I just go back to my problem with this was the timing more so than him getting benched, period. It just seems like you're throwing away a draft pick in a season that isn't going to amount to anything when, who knows, he could get better because guys get better. Right. He's not exactly had a stable he's like, if you want to compare it, this is like the kid from the broken home who has one parent who works 3 jobs and the other parent is not around. That's Dwayne Haskins' experience as relates to the analogy to football. Okay. That's right. How unstable his time here has been is that. And so I don't think it was an effective use of that resource to get rid of him so quickly.
I will say this. I saw one person make this comp about Haskins, and I think it is somewhat fair. They said in baseball, a guy like Haskins would have been put in Double-A after he was drafted for 2 or 3 years to work out his mechanics, and he could have come in to the pros and been great after that. But the NFL just doesn't have that kind of setup. Like if you had just sat Haskins somewhere where you could say, just work on your footwork, work on your
Double-A
reading.
Louisville or something.
Yeah, exactly.
For a while.
He could have come in at 25 and been a stud, but the NFL doesn't have that kind of setup for guys.
And Jamal, I couldn't find the quote from the quarterback coach.
It's Quincy Avery's his name, if that helps. But
Quincy Avery, okay.
The first thing.
Hold on, let me see if I got it bookmarked. Hold
on. He said something along the lines of, I found it here. Developing or being average is not something that we allow black QBs to do. You can either be elite, but anything other than that is no for them.
Now, from a general perspective, I think it's very clear that the NFL, for going back decades, has discriminated against black quarterbacks.
Oh,
there's no doubt about it. It even happened to Lamar Jackson 2 years ago. Bill Polian getting on ESPN and clearly not even having watched his film, said, oh, he's a running back. Said he's undersized and running back, knows nothing about him. Looked at him,
right? Black
guy who can run, not a quarterback. I mean, those kind of judgments have happened consistently over and over and over and over again for years. And even Haskins, to a certain extent, he's a black quarterback, so they expect him to run. Well, guess what? He's a pocket quarterback.
Yeah.
There's so there are expectations, and it's not just a coincidence that Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl after the NFL had been around for however 50 years or whatever.
Right. Well, I mean you so have to go to the 60s to find the first black quarterback to play even.
Yeah. So Avery's not wrong from a general perspective, but from this particular case, I think that's just needlessly stirring the pot, because Ron Rivera, say what you want about the decisions he's made since he's been here. One thing Ron Rivera is a racist.
Yeah, I think that's obvious to anyone who watches Rivera.
I think one of the things that just bothers me, talking about the quarterback in general, Washington has been. Well, actually, it's crazy. I just saw a stat. Robert Griffin III was 9 quarterbacks ago.
Yep.
Is that really true? That can't be true.
9 quarterbacks ago.
Oh, my God, that's awful.
And then since 93, this one isn't, I can't remember this one, like for fact, but in 1993, since 1993, there's been 30 quarterbacks here.
Yeah, it's about one a year is what we average.
And man. I say this to say, in 27 years, which is obviously 93 is my birthday. This is easy math for me, so I can count this. In 27 years, there's been glimpses of good quarterback play, but there has been nothing sustainable. There's been Brad Johnson that we let go, and then I can't even tell you after that who's had glimpses of like they should have been here
number
long
2.
term.
Oh, Soup Campbell was up there. He was consistent for several years.
Soup's up there.
You said who, Steve?
I said Soup Campbell. I meant Jason Campbell.
Okay.
It's just fun to call him Soup.
Yeah, so say all this to say, if there was somebody who was a bona fide, okay, he's the real deal, we would have known what it looks like and we would have seen it. And that's the only thing that bothers me when it comes to QB controversies, because look at how we discuss any quarterback that has come in here since XYZ. We talk about certain throws that they make and their mechanics. Yeah. We're not talking about how they dominated a game or the type of plays that he brings, the type of offense that he makes this team, like how dynamic it can be, et cetera, et cetera. We don't talk about that. We talk about the little things. We should know what a quarterback looks like, and it's unfortunate that we know Haskins needed development. But at the same time, nowadays you get those young quarterbacks who are coming in and they show those glimpses from year one. It doesn't have to be in the beginning of the season, but they show the glimpses year one. It could be mid to late season. But we know what we got in somebody, and you can work with it. We don't have that, and that's not just Haskins. That's just this quarterback position throughout the entire 27-year period. There's been people who is like, all right, we got a preview of them, but this isn't the guy that we need to keep. Like we don't have franchise quarterbacks here, and it's unfortunate.
Well, yeah, and we need to move on. But just as an example, Peyton Manning's rookie year didn't have good stats, but you could tell immediately this dude is going to
Yeah,
be awesome.
sure.
Even a casual observer saw that. You could see it in Kyler Murray. As long as he doesn't get hurt and squashed because he's so short, he's kind of got it. You can see it in some of these guys, and I'm not sure you could really see that in Dwayne, but you know, I thought he deserved more time than he got in a more stable environment than he got because stability in the system is everything for these quarterbacks.
It
Kyler
absolutely
Murray
is.
would fail in Washington, and the reason is the system doesn't fit him at all. What does fit him is Cliff Kingsbury's system from Texas Tech, which is what in
Sure.
Oklahoma, which is what they're doing. So it's a lot of it is about the situation, and you know all those things you were saying, Jamal, are true. But the other thing that's true is this has been a horribly run organization from top to bottom from since the 90s.
Yes.
Terrible. And so they ruin guys, and they create a bad working environment, and bad attitudes, and all of that contributes to ruining players, and that contributed to the downfall of Haskins, I think,
Yep.
too.
I think so. Like you said, we got to move on because we got to talk about the La Rams, as they're called now, the French team
The
from
Rams,
La Rams. You
they
know,
might as well be French for all Los Angeles cares about them.
yeah, yeah. Right? If they played in Paris, they'd probably get more fans. Um, all right, so let's talk about this. I went and watched their last game where they just beat the snot out of Daniel Jones and the Giants. The score doesn't reflect it, but man, like all their line did was put Daniel Jones into the grass and then rub his face into it afterwards. Like every play, it seemed like he was on the ground.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because when I watched that film, my initial thought was, "Oh my God, what do we do about
Yeah, Aaron
Aaron
Donald.
Donald?" Right?
Yeah,
So, not having a great thought in mind, I asked an offensive line expert, our old buddy Robbie Duncan, and Robbie got back to me. And my question to Robbie was what I just said. It's like, "Hey, what the heck do we do about Aaron Donald? He's fast. They move him around. He's smart. He's strong. He's, the perfect defensive lineman." This is Robbie's response. He's very fast off the ball and gets very aggressive about getting penetration, getting to the backfield. I try to use this against him. Hit him with some trap and counter, maybe even run some option looks with him as the read man. For passing, we'll need to run the same stuff they did against the Ravens, quick streams, screens, slants, etc. So
hmm
that's from an offensive lineman. That was what Robbie said. Um, Look, defensively, Washington needs to figure out how to run the ball. And let me tell you why. These guys are giving up 5 yards a carry
yeah.
on the ground. They're not giving up much in passing yards necessarily in points, but one thing people can do is run against them.
They
They
have a
haven't
good
run.
secondary. They have a lot of big names there.
They've got Jalen Ramsey, who's one
Yeah.
of the best corners in the NFL. And they've got other guys back there, but running the ball seems to be one thing that they don't do well against. And unfortunately, Washington is a terrible running team. So it's sort of weakness against weakness to a certain extent. But I think to win this game, especially with a new quarterback in there,
Yeah.
they need to figure out how to run the ball effectively somehow, even though that may not happen.
Well, I think I agree from what I saw. And the one thing I would say is we kind of saw, even though their run game numbers weren't great last week, what was great was Gibson out of the backfield making catches, which it's not running in the traditional sense, but plays that running back can work same as runs in terms of effectiveness. So I think maybe if the run game is still struggling, you go back to that because they did that very well versus the Ravens.
Yeah. Jamal,
Uh,
thoughts?
yeah. I because of the quarterback change. When I'm talking about Washington. I don't know exactly how the run game is exactly going to look now. Because I know a lot of the things that they were doing was like quick throws, a lot of things, swing passes, anything to the flat, things to try and get the football into their playmakers' hands. And um, even I get it. Like the Rams is not that good defensively, and in terms of stopping the run, their yards per carry is bottom half of the league. Yards allowed, excuse me, bottom half of the league. But It's with this team and the way they can perform up front, the Washington team. I don't know like how they're going to run. Is this going to be a traditional run set, or they're going to continue using the motions and using the swing passes to continue like using that as an additional method of quote unquote running the football. I think that's the best method at this point because they can perform well. Like Antonio Gibson does well in this area, and so does Isaiah Wright. Like he those passes at the line of scrimmage, those are carries for him. So it takes a lot to be effective, but at the same time, it's like how does Scott Turner want to approach this? And he's had 2 games in a row where he's shown some versatility. That like he's a competent play caller, but this is shaky because they're going to need to run the ball, and I think that's going to be Kyle Allen's best bet to try and get a dub his first game.
Well, I do think, one of the things they did say that I believe them about this is they said one of the reasons they wanted to go to Kyle Allen was he knows the full offensive, philosophy at this point. And I do think a big part of that, Jamal, is what you're talking about. It's these, kind of more exotic plays that work like runs. The plays to right, getting these guys more incorporated, these young guys who are kind of athletes and not running backs or wide receivers. So you got to hope that that's kind of their thinking here.
I think we're going to see a more open playbook. I think a lot of the reason for part of the reason for the offensive game plan last week was to simple it and dumb it down for Haskins.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you have a quarterback that's struggling? Well, let's give him a chance to succeed in passes he can do. What can he do? What he can do is a bunch of flat passes, a bunch of screens.
Sure.
Let these guys who can get a lot of yak, like Terry McLaurin, can do it. Do it for him. Because by the way, I meant to mention this on the last show and I just forgot. I didn't look it up post Ravens game, but before the Ravens game, of the starting receivers in the NFL who had more than 10 receptions on the year, Dwayne Haskins was number 2 in the NFL in yak.
You mean Terry?
What I said? Yeah, sorry.
I
didn't mean. I meant
yes.
Terry McLaurin was basically second in the NFL in yak. Now there's a couple guys that were ahead of him that were, hadn't played much and the stats were skewed. But of the players who've played and had catches,
right?
McLaurin was second in the NFL.
Yeah,
so
you're gonna have one
that was
guy,
a week ago. That was a week ago. But
you're always gonna have one guy who caught like a screen for 80 yards.
Yeah, right. There's a couple of those guys, but in terms of the guys who played, that's what it was. And so I think that's why we saw what we saw. And so I do think that Scott Turner is going to open up the playbook a little bit, but it's all keyed upon the run. They have to run or it's not going to work because Kyle Allen certainly isn't Peyton Manning, and you do have Jalen Ramsey back there, and they have some good safeties on top of that. And, they're not going to run the ball up and down the field on these guys or pass the ball up and down the field on these guys.
No, they're not.
But here's the thing that I got, and I missed 20 seconds, so
that's all right. We're just talking about receivers.
Okay, so here's the thing that I thought about too. To what extent is he opening the playbook? Because the playbook, in terms of calling the plays, it could we think when we hear more like a more experienced quarterback within a system that you can do more. But at the same time, what if that quarterback that was in the game, i.e. Haskins, which is actually part of this problem, what if that person was just missing the reads in the current plays that he was calling? So it may not be in terms of opening up. Like that can be just be comfortably calling the same things the things that you wanted to call against the defense, but somewhat Haskins limited you to 5 plays versus you were calling these earlier in the year against the Eagles and the Cardinals, and he was just missing things. So, or even the Ravens, there was plays that that was shown on film where he was missing things. So I don't know to what extent that opening the playbook means something much more grandeur. It could just be something as simple as, look, I see that this guy, he knows the reads, he knows where to go with his progressions, he knows where to start when he drops back to look for a receiver or a target. So I don't know to what degree they mean open the playbook and what that means for.
I don't know either. I mean, we'll have to see, but that's what I
just don't think it's not. I don't think it's that drastic when we hear those terms. I don't want people to think it's so significantly drastic or like we're going to all of a sudden average 400 yards a game or something like that. I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, I don't think so. I think what you want to hope for is more what you're talking about, Jamal, where it's about, is he making better reads? Is his completion percentage better? Is it in a third and long play? Are we not getting a ball that's 5 yards short of the
one way or the other? I think Kyle Allen's going to go downfield more. Dwayne did very little of that against the Ravens. Very little of that. His average air yards was almost the lowest in the NFL. So whether it's because of reads or whether play calling, I think what we will see is the offense opening up a little bit in the passing game against the Rams. But either way, like we said, I think the conclusion we've all said here is if they don't run, they don't win. They have to run against this team.
Right. All right, let's switch sides to talk about the Washington defense versus the Rams. I look at Jared Goff and I'm like, finally we have a guy who's not going to be running around all day. A guy who the defensive line can actually maybe get a sack or two on again. Because Goff is, when everyone else is so mobile now, he's pretty much the closest you get to a pocket quarterback these days.
Yeah.
Of that generation, at least.
The Rams are a running team.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the problem is they're not a great running team, but what they do is what a lot of NFL teams did in the past, maybe not so much anymore, but the Rams will use the run game to set up the pass. They do it very well. And they do this because Jared Goff isn't that good if you have to rely. What we did prove a couple of years ago is Jared Goff is not at the level of a Brett Favre or somebody. He needs help. And so what the Rams do a lot is they go with Darrell Henderson and who's the other guy, Brown.
Mm-hmm.
They will use those two guys to set up play action and then go in short pass, West Coast offense style screen game. But it's all set up off of play action. And it's all set up because of these runs. And they do a lot of jet sweeps because they've got Cooper Kupp, running around back there. And so they do a lot of things like that to confuse you. But it's a classic build on the basics early in the game and develop it and start to confuse a defense because you're seeing new plays off the same looks, and it's usually play action passes based on runs that they did earlier in the game. That's the Rams, I think.
I don't disagree. I mean, we know Sean. We've seen him here for coordinating for 2 years. Yeah. No, I was saying we've seen him here two times as a coordinator in Washington, and then we've seen him in LA for 3 years, and the concepts are pretty much similar. I don't disagree with anything that Steve had already said. I just have questions about Jared Goff, and I think the easiest thing, again on the defensive side, if we want to come out with a win, the easiest thing that you got to do is pressure Jared Goff. I don't think he's that good under pressure. I also just don't happen to have a lot of respect for Jared Goff because I've seen him play under pressure, and he's more so he's so reliant on Sean McVay and his system. Like he can't do anything off schedule, in my opinion. And that's what makes Sean McVay so great because he does his best to make Jared Goff feel comfortable in the offense, and he performs within that realm.
Yeah.
But if you shake things up, that's what knocks what's the name off his mark. And I think that we have the run defense, to be honest with you. Now I don't like, and I've talked about this as well, I don't like how the defense gives up these explosive plays, and a lot of people like to blame the offense for why they're giving up points. But the offense is not giving you all of your defensive possessions inside the red zone already. Like you still have to stop them, and Washington has failed to do that sometimes. And that's what kind of bothers me is like these random explosive plays or these long drives that has nothing to do with anything other than themselves. And that I think is part of the problem. But at the same time, with this offense, if you can stop the run, I believe that they'll be doing fine because this offense, this front seven can really get to the quarterback, especially this offensive line. I think they can get to the quarterback.
Yeah. Our friend Rick Snyder wrote a column published Wednesday, the day we're recording this, talking about, maybe it was Tuesday, but talking about how the defensive line has been a disappointment relative to the assets injected into that group. And that's something I've been saying for a long time and have been told I'm totally wrong repeatedly by the Twitter Illuminati. But Jamal's right. Look, they haven't stopped anybody, okay? They've given up 30 points 3 games in a row. And you can't blame all that on
32 points a game.
Yeah. And you're also right, Jamal, about Jared Goff. And this is the beauty of a team that recognizes the strengths and weaknesses of its players and surprisingly tailors its offense and the offense around the strengths and weaknesses of a quarterback. Imagine that. That's just a foreign concept to us here in DC. But Goff doesn't do well when he's the man. When it's a passing offense, they rely on him. You're absolutely right. You can throw him off his mark. So, and this is why they have the offense they have. So what I would do this game is blitz the hell out of this guy all the time and make him very uncomfortable because he's having a good year. 72% completion percentage, 108 quarterback rating, only throwing 2 interceptions. He's having a good year in this dink and dunk kind of thing they're doing. So, yeah, I think they definitely need to shake him up. That's job one.
Last week, he didn't get past 150 yards until close to midway through the fourth, where he had that one big pass to Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And he had a good percentage, like you said. I think he was like 10 for 12 at that point, or something.
It's kind of the Kirk Cousins a little bit.
Well, there's a reason for that, obviously, that we all know. Sean McVay kind of made Kirk Cousins into a successful quarterback, doing the exact same thing.
Because here's the other thing. I mean, Malcolm Brown isn't that good. As a team, they're a rushing team that's only averaging 4.2 yards per attempt. And granted, Darrell Henderson has done better, but this is not like we're talking about the '83 Redskins with Riggo here.
No,
this is a run team that's on the run, and what they do is they rely on Aaron Donald to crush you and that defense to crush you. I don't think this offense does not scare me that much if the defense can start playing.
As long as they can contain Kupp's speed, he does have good, speed when he gets the ball.
Yeah, and Robert Woods is a great receiver too.
Yeah.
He's probably a top 10, top 15 receiver in his own right. So they have good receivers, but I just think job number one is to make Jared Goff immensely uncomfortable.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Chase Young is probably going to be out again, so that doesn't help.
No, that is a bummer.
I sure as hell hope not. Like, that's the only bright spot for this season with me. Please, Lord, let this man come back in the game. Please let him be healthy.
Well, he didn't practice on Wednesday. It was a DNP for Wednesday, so take that for
he was in pads, but not practicing.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Okay, guys, we should wrap up. Let's give final scores and close this thing out.
Okay.
Jamal, I'm going to ask you to go first.
So I was not expecting this quarterback change to happen so soon, let alone in a week where I said we was going to win. For obvious reasons, I can't say the same thing is going to happen given the circumstances changed. That being said, I do not think the Washington football team wins this week. I think they come close though. I think they compete because the offense will look a little bit more quote unquote competent. So I'm going to say 21-17 LA Rams, and Washington falls to 1-4.
Okay. For my part, I'm going to go against my natural pessimistic tendencies in this game. And I predicted a loss when we did our season predictions. What's that, Jamal?
I said, don't tell me we about to switch up.
We are. Yeah, I think I'm going to predict a close win this week. And the reason is maybe I didn't watch enough Rams film, but I'm not that impressed with these guys. I'm really not. And so I think that if Kyle Allen can play well coming in, which I think he will, because he's going to be on his game and wanting to impress people, I think the offense is going to be a lot better. And the other thing is the Rams are traveling across 3 time zones. Those trips are always difficult, the West Coast, East Coast thing. So I think the combination of all that, I think Washington can actually eke out a narrow victory along the lines of like a 24-21 kind of victory. That's my prediction. And I'm going to regret it and say I'm dumb and I should go back to my natural pessimism and just predict the loss that's going to happen, because it probably will. But that's my official prediction, 24-21 Washington.
I'm kind of with you, Steve. I feel weirdly like I watch the Rams. I'm like, this team shouldn't even have the record they have. Like, they're not. I get why they beat the Giants, but
Dallas has no defense.
Yeah.
At all. They beat Dallas.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, their record is propped up on a horrible NFC East.
Yes, that's very true. So I actually feel fairly good going into this game. I think it's close. I'm gonna say, and this is a bold one, 22-21. Washington wins.
1 point, huh?
Yeah, score a 2-point conversion to win it or something.
And by the way, the Rams also beat Philadelphia, so their victories are against the Cowboys, Philadelphia, and the Giants. So it's these guys ain't beating the Ravens and the Patriots. They're beating the other dregs of the NFL.
Yeah, so I think we have a shot here. Guys, this one went a little long because of what happened today, so, no surprise there.
It's okay.
But I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I'm sure they wanted to hear all about the Haskins thing and get our takes. Tune back in Monday, post-game show. I won't be here because I have a family thing to do, but you'll get to hear Steve and Jamal and maybe Rob if he's able to get there. So, enjoy that, guys, and later.
Peace.